Hey everybody, welcome to my darkroom. It's a new facility. I moved up to Vancouver, Washington here a couple years ago, and it's been a long time since I've posted any videos on carbon transfer. So tonight I'm going to show you how I make tissue, or how I make tissue. I'm going to pour some glop here so you can kind of see how that's done, and there's several ways to do it, but I've been doing this for going on 11 years, and I've been doing it this way ever since I started. And this is one of the easiest and best ways to do it. First thing you need is a level surface. I built this platform that'll handle 20 by 24 sheets, should I go that size. But it's a piece of wood that's been leveled to the countertop. Fortunately, the countertop is level. On this double sheet of plywood that I have, I epoxied down a sheet of metal, flat metal to, it's about, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch thick steel that's epoxied to the surface, and it's perfectly flat. So I get really nice even pours, and I recommend that whenever you start doing this, a metal surface is really good to pour on. You go to your local home centers here, at least in the United States, this is about maybe 1/2 inch wide metallic strips. Comes in a roll, and you can buy it, and it sticks to the surface here and makes it very very easy to frame in the tissue that you pour the glop on, and that way it contains the glop in a controlled environment. So what I do is I pour on fixed out X-ray film, and I use 10 by 12 sheets for my 8 by 10 prints. It gives me a lot of room, a little excess extra border. So I'm going to pull some out of the water here, so give me a second. And the thing I like about X-ray film is it's reusable, because it's a very nice firm substrate, holds up really well to multiple use. This is just a regular squeegee, and what I'm doing here is I'm just squeegeeing off the excess water. The reason for this is just to hold it to the metal, nothing else. I just want to make sure that it stays down. It gets a little slippery after you've poured some. I've already poured a whole batch of 8 tissues, so this is kind of my second run here. So then what you want to do is take a lint-free towel and then just kind of wipe this off to get any surface water off of it. And there you go. Get that wiped down. And then I do 2 at a time. Some people do big sheets and cut them down, but I reuse the sheets. So what I do is I cut my metallic strips to fit, the outside diameter of these pieces of X-ray film. So the one in the middle is cut a little short so I can kind of separate the 2 sheets. And this is brand new X-ray film. There's no holes in it. Generally I have holes in it from when I pin it to the boards that I hang it up on to dry. So this is virgin sheets, which is pretty cool. So I just frame it in like this, pretty simple. And then down on the floor behind me, and I don't think you can see it in the video, excuse me a second, is basically my glop has been heating up in a, all it is a cooler that I've got warm water in. I've had it sitting in there in the water bath for several hours. And I'll go through making glop in another video, but this is just to kind of show you how I do it when I pour it. But what I do is I filter this back and forth a couple of times. I've got these Kodak beakers that are really nice. They're rubber beakers, and they're a little flexible, so they're easy to hold on to. This is 1,000 milliliters. And so what I do is I like to take this and just kind of gently pour it into another beaker, and I have an old piece of cheesecloth I'm using here to filter out any large pieces of maybe pigment that hasn't been dissolved. and generally I have pretty good success with my pigments. I mainly use Black Cat India ink from Dick Blick, which is a good warm black. I like it. It suits my image style. So I'm just rinsing off the cheesecloth here to see if there's any pigment particles in there, and there aren't any, so that's a good sign. So just going to filter it back into the original container, and then we'll be set to pour. And so it's just a matter of being careful. Sometimes it'll overflow on you, come down the cheesecloth, so there's definitely an art to this. This is the part of carbon printing I feel is the most important, one of the most important parts, because this is where your image begins, is right here. Is when you're printing in carbon, you're making your carbon tissue that's going to be your final image. So my opinion has always been, why would you leave that to somebody else? A lot of times people buy Bostic & Sullivan tissue because of convenience. This is just a little 70% alcohol that I'm just going to put in here. I just put a dab in. Some people incorporate it into their mix, and I don't think you need to. I just put a little bit in there before I pour, just to reduce any bubbles that might occur. So we're going to rinse out cheesecloth again. Ooh, that water's hot. And I'll show you what I do to pour it. Now what I do is I pour about 125 milliliters per sheet. So I have a little smaller beaker, another rubber beaker that I pour into. And so what we do is we'll just take this small beaker here, move this guy out of my way, and I'll pour 250 milliliters in here. And it gets a little tricky. The first pour, sometimes I lose a little bit, but this one looks pretty good. So you try to run it down the side. You don't want to create any additional bubbles, because bubbles are really not our friend. So what I do then is I'm going to take this, and I put this on a candle warmer. Back over here in the corner I have a candle warmer. This thing is great because it keeps it right at the right temperature. It's probably about 105 degrees. Maybe a little less. I don't really even measure it. I took it out of the water. It was 108, 109 degrees. So now it's probably 105, something like that. So what I do, I'll start at a corner and just kind of work my way around. And I like to get to the corners so it'll fill in, and then I just kind of do maybe like a little X thing here in the middle and let it do its thing, and then I move to the next one and do the same thing. And sometimes I'm a little off on my volumes, so what we need to do, sometimes I can get this poured perfectly where I don't need to worry about filling it in or moving it or anyway. But it's always cool to, I can even it out with, this is just a regular comb, and all I'm doing is just moving the glop in to fill in, you know, the areas, so we have a nice even pour. And the tissue is pretty much done. That's really all you need to do. So that's how I pour tissue, and some people do it different, but I've had wonderful success with pouring tissue. So if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email at jimfitzgerald101.com or Jim at carbonartphotography.com, something like that. Or carbonjim at AT&T.net. There you go. Anyhow, I hope this has been helpful. It's really the most important part to producing wonderful carbon prints. This is about 1.5 millimeters tall. People have asked me how thick of a pour do I do. I like to pour thick. It gives me a lot of advantages when I go to develop. So any questions, hit me up. I'd be happy to help out.